you think about it, this is where you're producing your product. Every little movement, if it's friction, it wears on your psyche for sure. I've worked in some kitchens where there's things that are 10 feet away and you have to run over and grab those, and 150 times a day. Over an entire year, we're talking thousands of dollars of labor just from walking to the pantry. When you look at your team that are producing things and things are just hard, it does impact that. So there's a lot of turnover that happens because of that.
Welcome back to the Restaurant Growth Accelerator Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Scott. We help restaurant owners increase their sales, increase their profits, and have more free time with their families. So thanks for tuning in today. I'm Andrew, again, multi-unit owner for almost 20 years. And we've got Bruce here. Now, Bruce is one of our coaches on our coaching team, but we like to term him our kitchen expert. So that's your new title, by the way, Bruce, if you didn't know. Yeah, so what we're going to dive into today is all things kitchen related, whether it be kitchen equipment, kitchen layout, kitchen efficiency. We're basically going to talk about how can we get your kitchen to run better and make more money in your restaurant. So Bruce, let's dive into it today. First, I want to start with, how did you end up here with all of this knowledge around kitchens and all, like, how did that all come to be? Where did you come from? I don't know. Tell me all the stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it all started when I was young. I was probably about 17, and I had a job in a pizza shop. And I swear it was run by the Mafia, because I did actually try to quit. And the owner said to me at the time, "I'm going to throw you in the trunk," and then shut the door. So I stayed a lot longer than I should have.
Oh man, that I have not heard that before. But yeah, you try and quit, I'll break your legs. Like that's one way to do it.
Yeah, it was really like that. And I was 17, so I was scared and terrified, and so I stayed and I worked. And I started to really love the whole element, the excitement of it. The rush and the camaraderie of getting through that kind of excitement and servicing everything. And that was the start of it. And then I moved out west, out to Vancouver, and entered some full serve kitchens and really started to work under some good mentors. And they showed me all about, the systems and, how to, make the business profitable. And I really latched onto that. During that time, I kind of really enjoyed the business aspect of it too, because I started to learn that this is one of the hardest businesses to run, right? It's not like a computer store where your product's going to sit on the shelf for months and be okay. And the challenge of that, along with the people and the the culture around bringing in food, I was hooked. So it's been 25 years of that adventure, and been pursuing it ever since.
Yeah, you know what? It's so funny because the restaurant business, of all the businesses you could get into, the restaurant industry is not the easiest business to get into, right? There's so many things that can go wrong. There's so many little pieces here and there, and overall, margins, if you don't do things right, can get shrunk very, very quickly, right? And that's the thing, is most of us don't know how to run it as a business. Most of us get into it because we like the camaraderie. Like, honestly, like I look back at my most treasured days, like in the business, like working in the business instead of on it. The most fun was like you go into a busy rush. It's like for me, like our lunch period was a big time, or I had one location that was open after the bar. And so my best times were when there was just a lineup out the door of 30 people and shit was going crazy. And, like those were the days I look back and I'm like, man, like time just flies by because you're in it and you're having fun. And I think part of the fun of it too is when you're with really competent people, it also wasn't as stressful, because I'm sure you also know that like you get a few B and C players during that rush and you're like, oh hell, this is 10 times worse than what it should be. But
that right there.
Yeah. And so as an owner, and coming into this from a higher perspective, you often are there and people aren't at your level, but man, when everyone was at your level, it's fun. Like there's nothing that beats that. It's basically like you're in the middle of a sports game and your clock's ticking down and you're winning. It's just like, that's the excitement. Like it just feels Awesome. And I think sometimes people get addicted to that, which is also why we see owners that have a hard time. We have a hard time getting them out of operations because there is a gratification in doing that. Like you're instantly gratified, be like, man, I crushed it today. Like service went so flawless, and you're needed. And as we teach people how to become better business owners and work on the business as well, it might not be as instantly gratifying, right? There might not be that adrenaline rush of being in the moment. Granted, there's a lot less stress. Here's the other thing too. We don't remember the pain. And this is just like a human psychological thing. We don't often remember the pain. You wonder how people can have babies and then do it again. It's because you don't remember the pain. You only remember the good stuff. It's like if you look back on like past relationships that you've had that did not go well, you never look back at them with as much pain as there might have actually been. Then like 10 years later, you're like, yeah, like, it was okay. Like it wasn't great, but like we had some good times. And you've got these rose-colored glasses on when you think about it. So we never really remember the pain. We only remember the good times. So sometimes it's easy to forget all of the stress and all of the stuff and say, oh man, well, why don't I do that more? But anyway, it's an interesting thing to talk about, because I do see people that have come from places like yourself and myself as well. Yeah, you kind of miss it. You miss it some days. And it's hard to get out of it because you have to find your rewards in different things. But we don't remember the stress of it all. After we've been gone for a little while, we just remember some of the good times. But yeah. Anyway, that was kind of an interesting thought there. So let's talk about this a little bit more. Obviously, we've served over 1,000 restaurant owners, helping them make more money and have more freedom with their time. But let's talk specifically around kitchens. So what are some of the biggest things, like if you were building a brand new restaurant today, what are things that you would either do differently, or what are some core things that you've coached our clients on to help them improve?
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind right now is a simple question, and it doesn't really cost anything. And this is something that I had tremendous success with. So like you just talked about, you're in the energy of the business and things are good and, operating, and we're kind of have those rose-colored glasses on. This question for me was so effective. And I tell a lot of my clients this, walking around and asking the team, what are the next 3 things you're doing? Right? So, because what happens is you're busy. There's always things you're doing, right? But you're not thinking ahead. And, I used to practice jujitsu, and I know, chess players, the ones that make masterful chess players or really, black belts in jujitsu. I remember rolling a black belt, and I was only a white belt, and I just got murdered. And I asked that black belt, I said, like, how are you like reading my mind? And they're like, I'm just thinking 20 steps ahead, right? It's not like they might have some more technique and skill, but really it's that they are so confident in what they do, they're thinking ahead, right? So when I started asking my team, what are the next 3 things you do? The efficiencies just started to improve. When I'd walk in, they knew, I better know what I'm doing next. Otherwise, they're just kind of in this mindless state, chit-chatting and cutting onions or,
they're doing around. Whatever, and then once they're done that, they're like, oh, okay, they'll dilly-dally and work over to the next thing, and like, oh, okay, what's next on the prep list? Okay, I'm going to go and do that now. Yeah, no, totally. And even in a rush scenario, here's one of the things. I've actually found that in some of our busier locations, labor should go down. But sometimes what I found 90% of the time is when you have a high volume location, your labor actually goes up percentage-wise. And I'm sure that you're going to know why this is, but I think most of the people listening will be like, well, no, it's busier. It should go down because it's busier. You have less dead time and stuff like that. But the difference is in how each person on the team acts, right? So picture this for a second. Say if you let's picture you're in a small kitchen, maybe there's 2 people working, right? And it's going to be busy. Those 2 people don't waste any time. As soon as they have a lull, they're restocking. They're keeping things moving. They're getting ready for that next batch of tickets to come in. They're working on all of those things. Whereas all of a sudden you add a 3rd person to the mix with like a slightly higher volume. All of a sudden there's 3 people, and then they're like, oh, well, so-and-so can go and grab that from the walk-in for me when it's needed. Or like, oh, whatever, like there's 3 of us here. We have a similar amount to do. They don't have to work as hard. Because mentally, we will actually decide how we work based on the time allotted to complete a task. Now, there's a whole psychological theory for that. But basically, and here's the question I use, is if I said, Bruce, I have 10 Cambros of tomatoes I need done. I need them done in the next 30 minutes or we're going to run out. And then I asked you the same question, say the next day, I said, Bruce, I need 10 Cambros of tomatoes done, but yeah, not a big deal. It's probably going to be really slow tonight. And just if you can get them done by the end of the night, but whatever, it's not a big deal. We've got lots anyway, right? Which one of those is A, going to get it done, but B, get it done the fastest, right? Just in how you have given the parameters of that task. And so what you basically did by asking that question of saying, hey, what are the next 3 things you're working on? The inference in that is that, hey, not only should you be doing the stuff you're doing right now, but there's also other shit that needs to get done. So you better know what you're going to do and you better get it done.
Absolutely.
That's the inference to it, right? So by asking that question, that's a very masterful question. So props to that. I'd never thought of that one. Actually, that's a new one for me. But yeah, that's basically how we frame it with our people, is we're just reframing the expectations. And the other side too, which I know I've talked in another podcast about, is when you have too many people and you're a little overstaffed, what'll happen is people, again, they don't take as much personal responsibility, because anytime multiple people are responsible for something, the less likelihood of it getting done happens. Where if you assign it to one person and it's their job, they will more often get it done. But the other thing too is the more people you have, the more chance, if you're watching this on video, you can see my hands going, but the more chit-chatting will happen as well. The more socializing will happen. And that's a frequent thing. So then when you get a lull, they're more apt to chat, take a break, as opposed to someone who's being like, oh shit, more's coming, I need to prepare for it, right? It's a different mentality. And so by asking them those things, that helps them to actually understand what they should be doing. So I love that. So, I mean, that tip alone, yeah, can increase your efficiency right there, especially during busy periods when you have more people around. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
One last point before we move on, though. I always see a commonality. And again, I've owned enough restaurants and have coached enough restaurants that whenever labor goes up, it always goes hand in hand with cleaning duties not being done. We always had weekly and monthly cleaning duties that we made sure were accomplished. Well, and when I say made sure, they were supposed to get accomplished. And anytime our labor, because our target was, again, I come from more of a quick service background. So our target labor was, say, 19%, for example, non-management, right? So 19%. As soon as we hit 22%, it was like clockwork, stuff stopped getting done. Even though we had spent 40 man hours or person hours more, all of a sudden less stuff got done, even though we had more labor to fulfill less work. It's just because people then worked differently. They worked less hard because there was more people there, and they chatted more because they didn't have the urgency, right? And people can choose how to work, but they're just choosing not to work as hard because that's how you have set up the game.
Yep, it's very easy to slip into that mode.
100%. And we do it too, right? Like, it's at the end of the day, you're like, well, I'm not as much stuff to do. Hey, well, maybe I'm going to go home. Maybe it's nice out. Maybe I'm going to go for a walk. Maybe we'll go for a beer on a patio, like whatever the case is. We can do that too. Or do you actually start getting ahead on the things you need to do, right?
Yeah.
So it can happen for us too. We're all human. It's a human thing. But so we have to understand the human side of it and kind of set up our system around it. So no, I love that. Awesome. Well, what else you got? Tell me some more stuff.
Yeah, I think, inspired by The Founder, the movie The Founder. The Ray Kroc story. Well, something they did in that video, which, inspired me a lot. So I've also got a commercial kitchen design background, and obviously kitchen efficiency is something I've really geeked out on. Like I've timed different people cutting carrots versus ordering.
Can I stop you there for a second?
Yeah.
Did you ever draw it out in chalk,
That's exactly what I did. Yeah, 100%.
Nice.
And these are all the little things that I've seen, especially with, building out kitchens, is there's often a lot of focus on the front of the house if it's a full serve or even a quick serve, because that's, the presentation side. And then they'll kind of jam the kitchen into the back. And if you think about it, this is where you're producing your product, right? So
they're trying to get more seats in, but how are we actually going to get the ticket times that we need to fill those Yeah.
Exactly. So the designer's mind, it's like, oh, more seats, more dollars, right? It makes sense. But then in the back, they're struggling to execute. Their ticket times are going higher. The retention of staff is, it's higher turnover because every little movement, if it's friction, right? Like I've worked in some kitchens where there's things that are, 10 feet away and you have to run over and grab those. And you do that 150 times a day, it wears on your psyche for sure.
Well, yeah. And I was thinking too, it's not even just like more tables, more dollars, but more turns, more dollars, right? And so then if all of a sudden it's taking you twice as long to get food out, people are staying twice as long, maybe you can only seat 2 people in that period, right? Or like two tables, as opposed to maybe trying to get a third one or whatever. I mean, like there's like that also factors into it. And so this is actually a really interesting conversation because I was at Hell's Kitchen in Vegas because I absolutely love Vegas, by the way. It's not a city I can spend that much time in. It's a little pricey, but I mean, I think that's why they do it so well. Like 3-4 days, great. Like longer than that, and you have to anyway start making some decisions. But anyway, so Hell's Kitchen, going in there. And I swear, like, because Dave, who's our client success director, has been on the podcast a lot. We went there for dinner because we were there for a conference. And I swear, like, the food came out like 12 minutes. Like, honestly, it was so quick. Like, it was like we didn't time it, but it was like we hadn't even, the apps came out, the dinner was like right behind it. It was like, man, like, this was fast. And like, I think we looked at it, we probably only spent maybe an hour there just because our food was there. And like, oh, okay, well, it moved along really, really well. And I was like, man, like, whereas I went to another Gordon Ramsay property, it was a little bit different, but we had a table of I think 8 at this time, but we were there for 3 hours. And so I'm like, we were waiting for food to come out. It was definitely slower. So I was like, they probably could have turned this more had they been able to. So anyway, just that's one thing that I don't think we think about when we're thinking about design. So sorry to take us off in another direction, but yeah.
Finding great employees is always tough, but it's even harder today. There's more competition and wages are higher than ever, and most owners have a hard time working on the business because they're always putting out fires. I've released a free hiring playbook which shows you the exact job ads and the exact interview questions we use with our clients, along with the key shifts that we help our clients make to find the right people to work in their restaurant. So if you find yourself always picking up the slack for your team or constantly being short-staffed because of call-outs or unexpected turnover, this is for you. The link to get the free playbook is in the description. Grab it and let's get to work.
No, it's all valid. And you've talked a lot about, hiring, like retention, right? And the silent killer that is on your profitability, right? You've talked a lot about that. So that plays into it. When you look at your team that are producing things and things are just hard, right?
Yeah.
It does impact that. So there's a lot of turnover that happens because of that. And then with the kitchen efficiency, like I said, drawing it on if you're in a build stage, drawing it out onto a floor, a parking lot, you can actually mitigate a lot of those movements. It's a game of micro movements, really. But every time you have to turn or move something or reach for something is seconds on the clock, right? So when it comes to setting up, maybe you've got a current kitchen where you're not in the opportunity of redesigning or building, and you're working with what you have, you can just simply look at it and watch it during the peak time. See where people are crossing over, right? Tripping over each other. Maybe it's a little bit of restructure on the hierarchy on how things get passed or ordered. A lot of that can add up to seconds. So, I've had some kitchens where I've done some time tests on this, and the pantry was probably about 35 feet away. And I simply just counted how many times they had to go over there, right? Back and forth during the day. And over an entire year, we're talking thousands of dollars of labor just from walking to the pantry.
Just from walking. Absolutely. Yeah. No, this is huge. And I'm thinking there's been instances for me where, like I've worked in a bunch of different layouts. Like one was more of like a galley style and stuff like that. And all that adds up. And one thing we used to tell our team as well, before our rush periods, we need to make sure we have everything stocked up fully, like doing a line check, making sure that everything's there, because every time you go and take a trip to the walk-in to go refill something, that's time off the clock. That is time away from pushing out product. And Like that's the way that we kind of navigated with what we had. But what you're talking about is how do you start from the outset with that mindset, which I love.
Yeah. Well, if you think about everything else in the world, it's all about, making things efficient. All those little seconds count, right? And it's often neglected when it comes to producing food, right? In that environment, in a restaurant environment.
Yeah, we're trying to think, how do we get 1% better? How do we get 1% better here? How do we raise our average ticket by a couple dollars or whatever? Well, I mean, how do we save an hour just in efficiency in the kitchen? Because even 1 hour over the course, 1 hour per shift adds up major amounts at the end of the year. And we don't really think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I would say is equipment. And I know we haven't talked a lot about this. Often equipment and technology is a bit of a, maybe down the road, right? Because often it comes with an expense. I kind of view it in a different light where, it is an upfront cost, right? So it is going to cost you some money, but down the road, it's going to pay for itself 10, 12 months, depending on what it is. And then it's going to start improving cost. So an example of that would be something like a combi oven, right? So a combi oven is a piece of equipment that you can pretty much grill, steam, bake, roast, even air fry, right? All of these things, you can program it to cook overnight. So if you're doing batch recipes and braises, you can set that up to program overnight. It'll keep the health data on there too. So if you ever have an issue, which happened to me once, you can pull the data off and show the temperatures and things like that. But this is a way where you can actually have your kitchen working for you when you're not in it. You can execute a lot of multiple items in there. So instead of waiting for this to cook and then this to cook and putting that in there, you can set timers on there and not have to babysit it. So these little things are massive for labor. So you could save 20% or more in labor if you're using one of those ovens strategically. And then on the other side, for your cost of goods, yield, right? 15, 25% yield improvements on a lot of products because you're cooking with humidity, right? And so when you cook products with heat only, food mostly is water, it's evaporating out, it's shrinking, right? So when we add some humidity back into that process, you're serving more of what you paid for. So give you an example of that. I switched to a combi oven to do prime rib roasts. I was doing them in the traditional way, and I was getting about a 70% yield, and I had to use AAA, right? This is for like banquets and stuff like that. After switching to this style of cooking under one of these appliances, I was able to get that yield up to the high 80s, and I was able to drop down to AA and still have the same quality. So within 10 months, I paid off that unit. So that was huge.
Yeah. And then over the lifetime of that, then all of a sudden that becomes savings. Yeah. No, I mean, and that's the kind of stuff that people don't think about. So what are some other pieces of equipment that maybe people are sleeping on that they shouldn't, or even ways to engineer their kitchen that they could do right now that they might not have thought of?
Yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of different ways. Just one more piece of equipment is, kind of like a warming cabinet with humidity. There's one, it's called CVAP. And I've used this with some clients that do, kebabs and things like that, high volume kebabs, and they're cooking them on a hot grill. Well, the client was finding that these kebabs are taking, 6 to 8 minutes and they're getting dry, right? The grill's too hot, it's drying them out, but they need it hot so they can execute fast. Well, with this unit, and it's pretty low cost, anywhere from $5,000 to $7,000. So it's not like a major, huge expense, but they were able to stage all these kebabs in a humid environment. So the chicken and the beef are all there ready to go, and they're juicy and they're held at that perfect temperature. Now all they do is slap it on the grill and get some color. So they went from like 6 to 8 minutes down to 2 minutes.
Wow.
So talking about turning over, customers, right? That's a huge improvement.
Yes.
So $6,000 or $7,000 to, maximize your lunch and dinner rushes is a big deal.
Well, just your speed. I mean, yeah, if you can start executing that in just a couple minutes versus, that brought that and shrunk it by 70% or 60% as far as the time. Yeah. So you could serve a lot more customers that way, right? Because one of the biggest things, especially in quick serve, for example, is literally just people see the line like, oh, I'm going to go somewhere else because people 100%. Are time compressed for quick serve. So the same is true for full serve, and you want to move people out faster. So
Yeah.
no, I mean, I think that's a great idea. So what are some other things that people can do if they can't really change their layout? What are a few other things that you've seen that have made, like, what are some other differences or changes that you've made with clients you've worked with that have had a good impact like that?
Yeah, definitely. So some things that you can do that are, without investment of new equipment or redesigning your kitchen, making sure everything's portioned. One, that's going to help your food cost, obviously, because you're, managing your portions, but even for executing, right? So if I'm working, let's say the printer, and I'm calling out the bills, I can now simply pass setups to people, right? Which is also going to be a cue that they need to cook it, right? So if I have a pie plate with, a bunch of chicken portions and whatever the vegetables are, that's, a communication process too. So they can see what's coming down the queue. So when the verbal call comes, that's going to speed up the cooking a lot. Having everything portioned is very critical, because a lot of places, will be cooking Alfredo to order, or they'll be cooking, pasta to order, things like that. So having those sort of pre-blanched and portioned and ready to go, or if you're making sauces in a pan, ask yourself, can I make this as a recipe? And then just have an 8-ounce ladle that goes in the recipe. Pasta is actually one of the things that I would say, mentally people think, oh, it's a low food cost, right? But if you're not portioning that, think about what happens. Maybe you get an extra couple ounces of noodles in there, and then what do you need to offset that? More sauce. And that's where, the cheese and the butter and the cream are all inside, and that can really bump up the cost on that.
Yeah.
Another big thing, it's simple, is wall shelves. Having things vertically stored in your kitchen can be huge. So if we're moving horizontally, grabbing things this way, putting them up. So example would be, for a fry station, having, I'm not sure what they're called, but they're basically stainless steel rings, and they're like a tree, like a coat rack, right? And you can mount those on a wall, for transfer bowls, right? So instead of, being cluttered and looking around for a bowl, it's right there.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing too, is having, clutter-free workspaces, right? Yep. So talking about the kind of the mindset and the psychology of executing efficiently when you've got tons of crap on the pass or the counter, visually it's just hard to decipher, right? So you're taking seconds away from that.
Yeah, and each time you do something, okay, every time you have to go and look for something and you don't know where it is, or you have to go run and get something, all of those things together just add up. And again, we're not talking about one individual instance of 5 seconds, right? Or 10 seconds. What we're talking about is that times every employee you have in the kitchen, times every hour that they work, times every hour that you have in the entire year. Like, those are the things that we're talking about. Yeah. I mean, we always think about, how can we get a 10% bump in our sales? Well, how can we get a 10% bump in our efficiency?
Yeah.
Right? What would be a 10% reduction in kitchen labor? Like, what would that be at the end of the year? Now, I'm not saying that 10% is necessarily what you're looking for, but these are the questions that we don't really think about, because we always just think about taking what we've got and how do we just drive more sales? How do we cut costs? But we don't think about the efficiency of it. So, because when's the last time? No, and it isn't. And when's the last time somebody just sat in their kitchen during a peak period and just watched, right? Most owners don't do that because they're in it and they're trying to do it. And they're just like, well, I don't have time to think about that because I just need to get it done. And this is really hard for me too, because I used to do analysis that are different peak times of how long it took someone to enter and exit, because in a quick serve, again, it's about getting those people out. So I wanted to know from the time they walked in to the time they left, how long did it take us, and how did that vary based on our different times of day? So I remember doing timing on that, and it was hard to do because you want to get in there and you want to help, but that was the important stuff I had to do, because then I had to say, hey man, like it's if it's taking people 20 minutes to get through here, they have like a 30-minute lunch break for a lot of people. So I'm like, it takes 20 minutes, like they can't come in here. So we're turning away business and figuring out how we could do it better. So then I went back and re-engineered kind of how we did things internally to get our speed up. So these are all great things.
Yeah, one thing I remember doing once, I had 2 prep cooks. One was a very seasoned, like she was like a Nona, she could rip through prep. And the client I was helping at the time, we were looking at efficiencies of the kitchen. And on the Nona's day off, the prep cook that was filling in for her role was very slow, right? So I started to kind of geek out on this, and I pulled out the stopwatch, and there was carrots that needed to be diced, right? So Nona's ripping through a case in 45 minutes, right? The fill-in prep cook is taking double, triple that, right? So I did a little cost analysis, and it was actually cheaper to buy pre-diced carrots for the fill-in cook versus the Nona, right?
Yeah.
So just to show you the little difference there, right? So operating a business, those are the choices you need to make. Is it worth bringing in, pre-dice? Like, do you have the storage, the space, and all that stuff to execute that efficiently? Yeah. Does the time make sense? Because there's a labor cost to produce those diced carrots going to offset the actual pre-cut, right?
Yeah. No, for sure. And that's interesting. And most of us don't think about that. Yeah. No, this has been great. So is there anything else that you want to bring to the table that you think anyone listening to this should be implementing or doing differently right now to help them with their efficiency, to help them with, ultimately making more money in the kitchen in ways they might not be thinking of?
Yeah, I guess the one thing that I'll say, and I was guilty of this in the past too, is look at your menu, right? And I think it's a very natural thing for us to want to put more on there, offer more because we want more sales, right?
Yeah.
And I will just say less is more. Anytime you keep adding on to the menu, this is where you start to get carried away. You lose your brand, you lose your identity, you can't execute efficiently. Quick example of that, I ran a restaurant at one point that was, ranked 21st in the world for North America for airport restaurants. We had a huge menu. I came in and we took that thing down from 50, 60 items down to 19. Everybody's freaking out. Wow, this is too much. But we actually the next year ranked number 5 because we could do things efficiently. It was clean, it was fresh, our labor was super tight. The team improved because everyone knew what to do, and then we could incorporate specials and have fun that way and test new ideas. So less is more, I guess, is what I would say when it comes to the menu. And then that also transfers to storage and execution on the back end, right? So fight that urge.
Yeah, no, 100%. And yeah, because they all can't be top sellers.
Yeah.
Right. So, and the other question too, and we've talked about this from our menu analysis, but yeah, are they all high profit as well? Or if someone is getting something that honestly you don't serve a lot of, but or if they are buying a lot of it and it's not profitable, then it's not really helping you in your menu.
Oh yeah.
So there should be something else that's there that's actually going to make you money.
I had dishes where I swear were top sellers, right? In my mind, because I created them. They were awesome, right? How could they not be? And I was challenged, and then I looked at the data. I was like, wait a second, maybe because I think they're so awesome, I see them a lot, right? It's what you focus on, right? And once you run it through the analysis, wow, maybe this isn't selling as well as I thought.
Yeah, it's whenever you start thinking about buying a particular model of car, all of a sudden you see it everywhere. And so we have that bias, right? We just see it happening. And so does the data back up your assumptions? And then even if it does that menu item need to be changed so that it fits within your goals for your restaurant? So no, I love it, man. Well, thank you so much for being here. We've dropped some knowledge in some different ways that we haven't talked about yet. So, hey, man, we'll have to have you back, and we'll dive in a little bit more.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And so if you want to hear more, make sure you subscribe to our podcast and drop us a 5-star review. And if you hated it, I guess you could leave it 1 star or no stars at all. But nonetheless, guys, I hope that you've taken this and it will help improve your business. So we'll see you on the next one.